I think. Okay. Shall I take over, Gabriella? Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, good morning. Great introductional words from the governor Anders. It's very nice that you could join, and of course to be here. We planned this for quite some time now. We plan to be in the field. That turned out a bit differently, but I think we are really adaptive and are gonna have a great week. And my job is basically to give you some impressions of Climate Cafe. What is it? What we're gonna do? I'm just gonna kickstart that. So I'm a professor at Hanze University, as been said, also a consultant at Deltares, and also an affiliated researcher of the Global Center of Adaptation. So you can see that climate adaptation is very central in my work, and I'm really glad we can virtually travel the world and make nice plans to make the world climate adaptive. So just as a short, just 10 minutes, what is a climate cafe? Give you a bit of the introduction on how we analyze an area, which is Gothenburg in Mölndal, and then we will set some ambitions and hopefully kickstart to actions. And I'm sure we're going to do, and that's some of the visuals that I'm going to see. Of course, it's a bit different than other climate cafes in a pandemic, but it's going to be still interdisciplinary, international education, inclusiveness. Of course, we're going to see some great tools that can help us all to make the world climate adaptive. I'm just going to show you some pictures because we don't have pictures yet from this week, of course, but we had run climate cafes before just to give you a bit of an impression. And I will be involved very closely this week with some of the things on the mapping of best management practices. Of course, I will join the river tour and help you basically design climate adaptation. But there are a lot of things that I can learn as well, and a lot. Gabriella can at the end of this presentation tell you a bit more about how art is involved and how does storytelling work. So. You all got the program, a very detailed the contact sheet, for example. But let's first address the question: what is Climate Cafe? Well, Climate Cafe is never the same, but it's a field educational concept, and I just put field in brackets because of the pandemic, of course, and it's involving different fields of science and practice for capacity building and climate adaptation. So that's key. You see here some pictures of a climate cafe we run in Sweden, Malmo, for this matter. I addressed some pictures, more of this, but basically we go all over the world digitally or virtually, as you can see here, Asia, Africa, South America, which is quite nice, run by different people. For example, Lotte introduced herself later, joined Manila Climate Cafe and then run a climate cafe in Peru. So, and also with Gabriella, we addressed a lot of climate cafes. So it's quite international in this case. And there's a lot of information about it. I just have 10 minutes, so I'm just going to share that even in Swedish, there are already written books about climate cafes, in this case, the Melmo. I'm sure we're going to write something about this climate cafe. I hope you like that, of course. So, and I will later, during the week or just now, I will put some things in the chat if you want to read some more about it and give you as much as information that you would acquire. So Climate Cafe, mostly it's about how we learn, how we can adapt. For me and a lot of people, according to science, of course, is that you really involve people and show, then you will practice what you learned. So it's not about making reports or scientific articles that a professor always does, because you tend to forget that stuff. So really involving, I think we have a great program this week to really involve you. So it's mostly about professionals, being young or older. It's really about inclusiveness. It's really about showing how it's done. And as the governor Andres said, it's about international learning from each other. Yeah, so it's great that we have an international group here, so we can really show that some things that are worked in Singapore, we can use that in Gothenburg or in the Netherlands and that kind of thing. So that's going to be central in this work. And climate adaptation is mostly about too much water, too less water, so it's drought and floodings, and also about other things that are related. And we're going to discuss that too, like subsidence or water quality. There are a lot of aspects involved, and that makes it a very international field. And also, of course, that's why it's interdisciplinary. So we're going to teach you some tools. And well, we're a university, so we use scientific tools, of course, but they're fun tools. And you will learn them during the week. Just know that everything you do is really science-based, and that's good to know, because most of you as students are, of course, related to universities, and most of you will probably work in the field with research, being a consultant or at a municipality or anything, and will be able to use tools. So the tools are in the work packages, and there are really some exciting ones, I would say. Of course, Climatecafé is basically a work package. Then we're going to have a virtual walk, river walk, which is really nice and challenging, of course, in a pandemic. We're going to use storytelling. We're going to use design thinking. It's about art and also rain tool mapping. And I'm just going to show you some visuals that how that can look. Because of course, having a river walk in a pandemic might be raising some eyebrows, so to say. But of course, there's a lot of things that you can see in the field already, or movies for that case. So I was not even, closely involved in this one, so I'm really gonna enjoy the river walk, that part. We're going to see on the work package on Climate Cafe and Climate Scan, we're going to see what is already out there, which can be very inspirational, of course. This is the in 2 days what we mapped in Malmö, Augustenburg area, for example, which was very inspiring. We saw so much, and we exchanged that knowledge between stakeholders that didn't even know that some things existed, and that kickstarted a lot more climate adaptation. So it's basically getting inspired, showing what's already out there. If it works there, why wouldn't it work in Mölndal or Gothenburg, for example? So, and we can, as researchers, use that for analyzing what kind of DNA cities have, or what makes sense for this particular area, having these stakeholders and talking about it. So we can analyze it and really help, hopefully, work things out. And one of the most fun and important thing is, of course, not the scientific part, but storytelling, getting engaged, having semi-structured interviews, and seeing how it works. If it's already out there, what lessons learned can we take from a region as Copenhagen or the Netherlands, or and there are already some really inspiring things in the Gothenburg area. So that we would like to learn as well. And then, of course, it's about analyzing ambition and action. What can we do? What are your ideas? We're gonna kickstart that with design thinking, and from the storytelling, we're gonna see what we can do. And of course, it's also about data. How much, if we implement something on climate adaptation, how much space would it require? What kind of costs are there? What is the effect on drought and that kind of thing? And we're going to see your ideas and put them really on a map, so detailed, so the municipality and other stakeholders can see what your ideas is, and you can really show them what it would cost, and all the details and the questions, answer their questions. And that's a great thing to do. It's very important in the work to answer these questions, get your ideas, and be very creative. And so I'm really hopeful that we can do a lot of great workshops and stuff. And then it's not only about technical tools, of course, and this is the last slide. It's about also bringing your ideas. You can have a great idea, but if you don't pitch it well or present it well, it might not happen. So also the competences on how to take your idea to stakeholders is a very important thing. And sometimes you have very little time, as I know, after being a consultant in 25 years. It's the elevator pitch. So that's something we're going to learn as well. So it's about competences, natural science, social science. So I'm really excited about it. And of course, we will explain all the workshops very in detail. So basically, this week is about international knowledge sharing, about it's still a week. We're going to teach you a lot of tools that you can use after this and really benefit from, I hope. And of course, we're going to learn a lot from you as well. And yeah, I'm quite excited about this. So having the final words, I really hope we have a very interaction week, and that we can learn a lot from each other, that we can have very really concrete output that we're going to bring forward, and I'm sure we will do, because in other climate cafes it achieves with the great experiences of Gabriella, Lotte, and the others of the team. So let's be international, interdisciplinary. We're not going to exclude anyone. So inclusiveness, and well, have a lot of inspiration, and share the challenges and solutions. And of course, also have a lot of fun with it, because if you have fun, you learn a lot more, and it's more fun. So I think that's for me to give a very short impression of what we're going to do. Of course, I didn't address everything on the program, but maybe I can give the word back to you, Gabriella or Lotte, to explain a bit more in the time that's left. Thank you all, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Floris. Yes. Good to hear from you. Thank you for the presentation and the nice introduction of ClimateCafe as the founding father of climate cafes. It's good to have given you the floor. And I would like to introduce myself. My name is Gabriella Milanova, and I will be your contact person for the whole week and a facilitator in and around all the different, connecting all the different elements. Well, we have very exciting program for the whole week, but I also wanted to, looking at the time, just a few minutes I have, but I wanted to see it go through with you with the program of today. So today is all about introducing the local challenge, introducing ClimateCafe, but also introducing each other. So we will spend the next the next few hours until 11, getting very interesting talks by Dick Carlson, Lisa Jarner, Emily Morrison, and Hakan Stromberg. We will learn about the local challenges of Gothenburg City, Mölndal City, the Agenda 2030, so the plans of the city for climate adaptation. We will learn also a little bit about the history of Gothenburg and Mölndal. And after that, we'll dive into forming groups and getting to know each other a bit more in depth, as we'll be together for the rest of the week. With that being said, I also will give an overview. This week, we'll do field work and data collection on the Tuesday. It's quite exciting and also quite interesting that we're doing everything online with a virtual climate scan workshop and a virtual river walk by Peter and Bjorn, who are also here in this call, and their colleague Magnus. Well, we will also look into storytelling, as Floris mentioned, and that workshop will be given by my colleague Lotte, who is also here in the call. And you have a chance also to talk not only with locals, but also with stakeholders, and have one-on-one interviews and get to know really the experience of climate adaptation in the city and how can things be implemented. We're also going to have a rain tool mapping masterclass by Floris. It's one of the tools he showed you in his presentation. And on Thursday, we'll focus on design thinking and art with another guest professor, Tirone Martinsson from the Art Academy in Gothenburg, who will also tell about the relation of art and climate change. And later on, we can ideate and design together different solutions and ideas. And on Friday, there will be the big seminar. It's an online seminar that is organized by Hanna-Marie and Björn, who I also want to say a very big thank you. And I'm very happy that you're here in the call, and thank you for helping organizing this whole ClimateCafe week. And thank you, Peter, as well, and all the guests that are here. So I would like to give the word to our first speaker, Dick Carlson. I have made you a co-host, so I hope that it will be okay in case you want to share screen. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. You can hear me and see me?
Yes.
Great. Then I will share my screen.
Perfect.
And now you see a PowerPoint presentation, I hope.
Yes, it's perfect.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me to this Climate Cafe, very interesting initiative. As said, I work for the city of Gothenburg at the Department of Sustainable Waste and Water, and I'm project manager for the city cloudburst adaptation. As you understand, if you have been to Gothenburg, we are under threat from a different kind of perspective according to flooding, because it's flooding I will focus on today, and that is raising sea levels. We have some rivers that floods occasionally, and it will get worse according to the climate change effect. And so we have the cloud burst that's already happening, but it will also get worse according to the climate change effects. Great. So what is the main challenges of climate adaptation for Gothenburg? This is our beautiful city from above. And as you can see, it's pretty dense city, pretty big city. It's the second biggest city in Sweden. And one first main challenge, I would say that it's connected to history, because a lot of the city is already built, and it's pretty small spaces left for making it denser. And that's what we very much do, as all other cities make cities denser. And so we find a new area and try to build a new building or something at that little spot. And that means that we are using everything, and we're using it for other things than to handle water. So it's not much room left to handle water in the already built city. So that's one of the major issues often when we start to do something new in the city. If I take that away, I don't know if you see the picture, it was in the way for me. Another thing, when you build a city, the ground prices are very, very high. So you want to make a lot out of all the ground. And that's why you don't leave space to like historical water courses and rivers and stuff. You put them below ground so you can build on the full surface. So a lot of our historical rivers and water courses are underground now in culverts and so forth. And that means that they can't swallow as much as it could when it was a natural water course. A natural water course was pretty effective to handle different kind of discharge. Another thing is when you built earlier in the history, you tried to you didn't have such big values increased in buildings and the infrastructure. And today you will, as I said, use everything for as much as possible and not taking flooding into account. And that means that you often live in basements and so forth. And basements are a risk part of the building. And you don't take that into account when you put computers and expensive furniture and so forth. So that's also an issue, that the floodings cost a lot when it happens nowadays. where, for instance, flooding, a cloudburst flooding in Copenhagen 2011 that costed approximately 1 billion euros for one cloudburst. And in Malmö we had one for 2014 that cost about 100 million euros for one occasion. Foundations of buildings is also interesting to have in mind when you build things that should protect the city from flooding, because it's pretty sensitive. You can't increase or decrease the level of the groundwater, because then the house will won't stand properly. Archaeology is also something that you have to take into account, and other protective values in the city that have a special need to stay protected because of the history. Landowners is also a thing, because today if you want to build a surface solution, and you have to have it like a river can't stop at half its length. You have to have a river that starts at some place and stops where it can be handled. But then when you have a surface solution, you will pass a lot of ground that have other landowners. And today we don't have legislation to use other landowners' grounds for our solutions. Topology is one major issue for all flooding, and don't build on the lower grounds that will have lakes in it when the flooding occurs, and that often happens. We are building on lower grounds. For one instance, part of the city in Gothenburg are built in a historical lake. If you look at those pictures about 200 years ago, it was a lake outside Gothenburg, and in the right figure you see that now the lake is gone and we have the city center on a historical lake. So that's also a risk, of course. Another thing is other interests. When you, as in my job, have focusing on protecting the city from flooding and effects of flooding, it's easy to think that my issue is the main and only issue, but other people doesn't always agree, because if you want to do measures, there is a lot of other things that you have to take into account. As you can see in this picture, there's a lot of underground infrastructure, for instance, electricity pipes and opto and things like that. You have traffic, you have ecology to take into account, and social effects that people actually live in a city. They should have a nice city to live in. Organization is one other main objective and one challenge, because the things we're doing now are pretty new in the city's work, to take climate adaptation into account and look at more extreme events, because it's very hard to understand if you haven't been in a situation with an extreme event. It's very hard to understand what the effect might be and what I should do to protect myself. If you knew that in 50 years you will be flooded, then you will probably wait for 49 years before you do anything. But the main challenge with, for instance, cloudburst is that it can happen, and it did happen in Stockholm a couple of weeks ago, that had a tragical outcome that one person actually died in a cloudburst. So we don't know when it happened. So that's why we have to start doing things, and then we have to change the organization, because there's a lot of stakeholders in those questions, all the way from international to national to regional to local interests, and it's both public and private. So a lot of people have to know a lot about this, to know that they are in risk and that they have to do something, and then they have to know what they should do and what their responsibility is. If you are a private owner of property, you have the responsibility to protect your house. Money is needed to do things, obviously, and one first question is, where should we get the money? Who should pay? And how should we share costs for climate adaptation? Would it be that everyone in the city should split the costs, or would we go to every single house and knock on the door and say that you have to spend some money on this solution? That raises a lot of questions. So that's something that we in Gothenburg are working pretty intense with now, how we should make a good sharing of the costs connected to actually making the city protected, robust from floodings. Another thing is, should we always build solutions? No, obviously not. It must be motivated, and you have to look into what are the effects, how bad are they, when you take financing into account, when you take the mental health and all other things into account, and is it worth the money to do it? So some kind of cost-benefit analysis are used in Gothenburg, and that's one way to approach that question. Another challenge is, and that's partly maybe why we are sitting here today, all of us, that it is a lot of lack of knowledge connected to this question. We don't have a long history in how we should do and how we should plan the city to take those things into account. So this is a pretty new thing that you have to take into account when you are planning a building. And if you haven't experienced an actual extreme flood, then you probably don't reflect about it at all. You have no clue what will happen and so forth. So we have a lack of knowledge in both what will happen and how we should plan and build a city. So that was a little bit about the main challenges, and it was quite a few of them. So what are we doing now? One first step is to inform and communicate the problem. As I said earlier, to have things happen, you have to know that we have some problem to take action from. So raise awareness and opinion about the question to leading to action in the city. And that's have been a main target for the last 5 years since we started up with this in Gothenburg. And we have come a long way. So now it's a more natural part of the city planning. Because now people know that we actually have to do something. And one other thing with informing and communicating is to learn from each other. A lot of people in the world and in Sweden are starting out with this job, and we don't want everyone to start from scratch. So we try to give information and get information to together learn from each other and do the best thing with as less effort as possible. One other thing that we're doing is that we actually give water space in the city. And as I said in the beginning, it can be challenging in an already built city, but it is often possible if you know that you have to do something and you know what you can do, if you have the right knowledge. And with giving a water space, it's that you see in the left picture. You should the water should be able to be handled without any consequences, economical or connected to health and lives. And they should be multifunctional, because this happens very, very seldom, a couple of times in a lifetime. So we shouldn't have a lot of things standing there for 50 years before it's used. So in this example, you can see that we have a park environment that is flooded. Another thing, when you look into cloudburst and for other kind of climate adaptation, is that you should zoom out and look at where are the best measures done. Often it's not done close to the thing that you are supposed to protect. It can be a lot of kilometers away that the best solution is made. Then you protect yourself, and you have the possibility to protect a part of the rest of the city. So we're talking about a catchment-wise approach. Look at the full catchment for the rain and see what kind of possible solutions is it. So in figure to the left, you see that we have structure plans for cloudburst handling in Gothenburg. And the main thing that is done is that you store as much water upstreams. It's those green things in the left figure. So in multifunctional areas, you let the water stay there until the rain is gone, so that it won't go down to the rest of the city. And then you have diversions in the downstream regions. And this is called cloudburst diversion, as you can see examples from here. And it's a road that up to the right here, and the roads doesn't usually look like that. You have often the high point in the middle, and in this case you have it's almost like an urban river when water gets there. And the next topology is cloudburst storing, as you can see examples from here. And it's in a simple way to think about it. Often in parks and different kind of yards, you often have it raised a little bit. And what if you lower it a little bit so that the water can come here, like 3-5 times in 100 years? And the same in parks. They are often, if you walk in the city, you can see that the ground level is often raised from the nearby surroundings. And another way is actually to build things that let water stay there in those extreme occasions. And then you have zoomed out, you have to zoom in to look at the actual thing that you're doing. And as I said earlier, there we have a lot more to learn. We don't have a lot of experience in doing those kinds of solutions with actually lowering parks and so forth. Because then someone says, but then it will be a damped area with a lot of water all the time. So it will be cloggy and walk in the area and so forth. But it is possible to build that way. We have examples on it. But you have to zoom in and see that you have the key things at work, like the water should obviously come to this cloudburst lake that you see to the right, for instance, and it should obviously leave it in controlled way. So you will let the water stand there until you have capacity in the pipes after rain. So you have to think about technical things as well. And like I said, we don't have a lot of experiences in that, and that often means that people say, no, we can't do that. And then you have to be stubborn and say, yes, we can do this, but we have to think about this and that. All of this in some ways is done to copy nature, because this is the way the nature works in reality. So here you can see the picture to the far left, that you have had a natural water course here, and here you built the city, and you have a culvert under the city that can't handle those extreme events. I don't know if you can see it, but the water builds on the surface. So it's pretty blue, a lot of water around the cities. This water will give consequences in form of costs for flooding. And then while we're doing those cloudburst structural plan, we make a new urban flood that is a bit like the natural flood. And the thing with this is that we create a solution that doesn't give consequences to the already built city. So copy nature is a good thing to have in mind as well when you do those kind of things. And then money, as I said, is it worth it? Not always. You have to check in that with, for instance, cost-benefit analysis, that the economical benefits are bigger than costs for doing it, taking everything into account. And then you should see who should pay and how to prioritize. Where should you build in a big city? Where should you start to build in a big city? And here's my last picture. So what you can take with you is organization. It's a lot of stakeholders to take into account when you do those kind of things. You have to have a model for financing, so you actually know how to split costs and that the benefits are big enough before you start. So you shouldn't do too much too early. And that's why you should have a systemic approach when you work with it like this, and try to engage a new part of things to take into concern. So follow a process and don't go all the way straight away. Do a lot of planning and do a lot of discussions with the people who lives there and so forth. And look into it catchment wise, so you don't do local solutions that only protect maybe one house when you could use the money 3 kilometers away to protect a part of the city. And one other important thing to make things happen in a city is to have a distinct comprehensive plan that give goals. Where should we go? How much should we do? Should we be able to handle things that happens every 1,000 years or 100 years or 50 years, for instance? What secure marginals should we have and so forth? So goals and design criteria, for instance, is very important to have for starters, to know where you start and where you should end in your work. Further information can be found in vatteniGothenborg.se. Unfortunately, it's in Swedish. So, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Such an interesting presentation and so many things, new things to learn. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to also just let the students know, in case you have questions, you can please just type them in the chat. We will move to the next speaker, but I would like to still give room for questions. So after, when we have the first coffee break, if there are any questions, maybe we can discuss them. So if you have a question or you're interested in something or would like to ask Dick Carlson something more, please type it in the chat. Well, thank you once again. Very, very interesting. Well, I would like to also invite Lisa. She's our next speaker to talk a little bit about Mölndal city. Oh, you're on mute, Lisa.
On mute.
Thank you.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to. I never shared a screen in Zoom before. but I think I will. Doesn't seem too difficult, does it? I'll do this, and
Oh yeah.
you can see yourselves, right?
Yes, now we see your
Yes.
screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Because, and now you can see
Yes,
my
perfect.
presentation, but you also
Yeah.
see. So I hide you. There you go.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, and thank you, Dick. My presentation will be a lot shorter and less detailed for many reasons. And I will get to that, but mainly because we do not work as comprehensive as Gothenburg do. But City of Mölndal, to start with, a little bit of fact. As you can see, we're in the center of the world, if you didn't know that, just south of Gothenburg City. There are about 70,000 people living in Mölndal, divided into 3, or if you like, 4 urban nuclei, Hällesaker counting as well, being a very small and rural area. 33, that stands for the registered and monitored water bodies within our municipality, registered as to the European Water Directive. There are also 6 natural reserves, and as you can see, which is very important in this question, we have no coastline. So there are rivers in Mölndal, there are lakes, but there is no coastline, and that is perhaps one of the reasons that we do not have a lot of work being carried out when it comes to climate adaptation as to the moment. So, sorry. Yeah, no, I normally, if I say anything in Spanish, that's because normally every day I speak Swedish and Spanish all very much combined, English not as much. So there we go. Some images from the city of Mölndal. So the first one is about the river. The river is the natural force that many centuries ago made room for the first settlements. In Mölndal, which means the Valley of the Mills. So the river is the source of force and what everything is built around, but also obviously where we have the problem with too much water at the heavy rainfalls. The second picture there is to illustrate there is a lot of space for nature and water in Mölndal, but not as much perhaps in the areas where the city is expanding a lot, which is the third picture there, showing that Mölndal is a growing city and very much part of the Gothenburg region. So if you look at that, you see the city of the center of Mölndal, and in the distance you see the center of Gothenburg. So it's all very, very close together. And the way the city is being built at the moment is very dense. Fourth picture, though, that is Lindome, which is the setting for the rainfall analysis that will take place. And Lindome is very much different from the city center of Mölndal. Lindome is a rural area, which is also being developed at the moment, but a very different level of density than the center of Mölndal. So when it comes to climate adaptation, Mölndal has been a neglected area for up till a couple of months ago, both in terms of knowledge, organization, and planning. But for many years, obviously, the city has handled issues related to stormwater. Floodings in Mölndal have been taking places even before climate change, and come a bit more often now. So stormwater floods and water quality are issues that are being dealt with by the city. We just don't call it climate adaptation. And we don't see it as climate adaptation. We haven't done the research needed to do so. So at the present, there's the flooding of the rivers that is the most obvious effect of climate change. But we have raised the issue many times, and this year our politicians have given us a new assignment to work most strategically with climate adaptation. So that has led us to recruit a new colleague, development manager within the field of climate adaptation. That will be our resource and an expert on the topic. So this new colleague will be listening in on Friday, and will come on board in Mölndal after the summer. And we hope that some of the results of this Climatecafé and the tool tested in Lindome could be a good start for her job. So as you can see, we're on a very different level than Göteborg. Part because there's no coastline, and the threat of flooding and the threat of climate change is not as tangible as in Gothenburg, but also because we haven't had the awareness politically about the issue. So what are our challenges? I would say that in urban planning, there's a competition for the land. Areas will be need to set aside for stormwater management, and also to allow for floods to take place. And you can see a picture here from a new part of Mölndal, which is being built the next couple of years. And this is actually part of the Mölndal River, the water body that you can see. So what is the best way to make room for the Mölndal River? Here are some examples. And what kind of areas and living environments do we actually want to offer the inhabitants of Mölndal? So we need to create an acceptance, both among our politicians and our citizens and our technicians for surfaces that can house biodiversity and periodically can make room for stormwater. So that is this is an important issue, the acceptance, to allow certain areas to be flooded, as Dick showed earlier as well. So this is actually the main issue when it comes to the Lindome Centrum Park that I will show you in a moment, because this is a park which is being used a lot by the citizens in Lindome. It's mainly just grass and some trees at the moment, and there's a project to make that to enhance the park and the qualities that the citizens are asking for a central park in Lindome. So how can we do that? And also we know that this river also floods and make room for that water. And another challenge would be to integrate ecosystem services in the adaptation that we're doing to make room for sustainable adaptation. At the moment, we've seen a lot of measures being carried out, which is mainly just bigger pipes for the water. So I personally would very much like to see that we can integrate ecosystem services in the adaptation measures in the future, rather than only technical solutions where there is space for this. And also we need to keep in mind that changing climate is not only water in the wrong place. It could be scarcity of water, and it could be other challenges that are not related to water at all, like heat waves, strong winds, damage to buildings, invasive species, etc. So that is an awareness that we need to start raising as well in Mölndal. At the moment, people are just thinking climate adaptation. When they realize that's not climate mitigation, they say, oh, it's when the river floods. And it could be more than that. And also the difference between water coming from the rivers and water coming from cloudbursts. So my last picture will be this. Now we move to the south, of Mölndal and the area of Lindome, which is a compared to the city center, it's a rural area, but it's also an urban nuclei. And as you can see, the station of the commuting train, which makes it a good place to stay if you work within the Gothenburg region. You can easily get to work. There's a park. As you can see, the shape of the park is because of it goes along the river. Now we're talking the Lindome River. Lindome River ends up in Kungsbacka River, which ends up in the sea in Kungsbacka. So we have some flooding issues here within the circle. The circle means 1 kilometer from the train station of Lindome, which is an area for targeted for development. And then the park, as I said earlier, will also get some money as a project to enhance the park. We have flooding in the park. We also have flooding further down the river in an industrial area just south of the park, and then also the fields that follow. And there is flooding issues in further down the river in Kungsbacka as well. So you will hear more about that, I think, later on in the week. Yeah, and that would be all from Mölndal.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Very interesting, and also really interesting to compare and to see what are differences, but what are also similarities in the challenges you're facing. So thank you for that. Again, mentioning if you like to ask Lisa something, feel free to add your question in the chat. And well, due to the time, I think I will. We can take 5 minutes, or I don't know if you like that there was a break planned, but we are a little bit over time because I also thought, well, it was very interesting to hear. So I wanted to let the guests speak. Well, so my question is for you, would you like to have a 5-minute break, or shall we continue with our next speaker who was planned for 10 o'clock? It's Emily, and she's here in the Zoom, and she will tell us a little bit about the Agenda 2030.
Are we taking a break or not? For me, it's whatever.
I was also waiting to see. Well, I guess we can continue, and maybe after your talk we can have 5 minutes.
Okay, then let's do that.
Thank you. Okay.
Let's see. I'm also quite new to Zoom. I'm mostly just used to Skype. So, but I will do my best here.
Oh yeah, you're doing great. We can see your screen.
Okay, and so then I will start my presentation.
Yes.
All right, now you see the big screen and not any sheets that I have for myself, I hope.
Yeah, just
okay.
Your slides, yes.
That's great. All righty, well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Emily Möllersten, and I work as a water resources administrator at the County Administrative Board of Västra Götaland. Wow, that's quite a lot of words. And yes, now that we have heard a little bit about the challenges that are related to climate change within the cities of both Gothenburg and Mölndal, then I wanted to take just a little bit of time to put this issue into a bit of a bigger context. And as I understand, all of you come from a variety of different backgrounds within environmental sciences and arts and culture, anthropology, and so forth. And I think this is really interesting and also very valuable, as well, as Flores said too, this is a very interdisciplinary and multifaceted issue. And I think it holds a lot of potential to deliver positive synergy effects between all of these different areas if the adaptation strategies are made in a smart way, so to say. What I wanted to talk about today, first I will explain a little bit about the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, or as they're also referred to, the SDGs. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with this topic, but I will take a little bit of time and just explain some of the core principles of the Agenda 2030. And then we'll take a look at what's called the Swedish Environmental Objective System and how that is related to Agenda 2030. And then we'll take a quick look at two quick examples of how climate change adaptation can contribute to sustainable development. And then in the end, I will tell you about this work group that I'm with at the county board and how we try to work with the agenda and the environment at the same time. But first of all, let's dive into Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. The Agenda 2030, it was adopted by all UN member states in 2015. And the agenda, it's often referred to as an action plan for people, planet, and prosperity. And these three sort of main targets, they're also related to what's usually called and described as the three pillars of sustainability: the social pillar, the environmental pillar, and the economic pillar, as you see here on the right. And the Agenda 2030, it's made up of 17 goals, which you also see here. But they also contain 169 targets and also 230 indicators, which makes it possible for us to then follow up and review how the work is going towards sustainable development. And the goals, they include everything from ending poverty to reaching gender equality, clean water and sanitation, life on land, biodiversity, and so forth. And this was very deliberate, as the agenda was meant to create a very comprehensive picture of what sustainable development is. And the agenda, it was also meant to be rooted in 4 core principles. And the first core principle for the agenda is called integration. And this means that the agenda and the sustainable development goals, they are integrated and indivisible. And this means that we have to work with all of these goals together. We can't just pick one and work on that one, but they all have to be worked with and worked on together for us to be able to reach a sustainable development. And then the second core principle is called universality. And this means that the agenda, it's meant to apply as much to the richest countries on this planet as it does to the poorest countries. And it's expected that every country will work towards sustainable development together. And the next principle is called inclusivity. And this means that everyone is responsible for reaching the SDGs, not only governments, but also industries, municipalities, civil society, and so forth, all have a role to play towards sustainable development. And then the last principle, which is called then leaving no one behind. And the Agenda 2030, it has a lot of focus on how to reach the ones that are furthest behind, whether this is the whole country or maybe a group of people within a country. It says that we should endeavor to reach the ones furthest behind first as we move forward. And I personally think that these sort of 4 core principles, they are a lot what gives the agenda a lot of its power, I would say. But the agenda, it also lays out a framework and common goals for all countries on Earth. And it serves as a sort of a shared vision and a platform on which then multi-stakeholder collaborations can be built. And the SDGs, they have also made it a lot easier to communicate what the goals and what the visions are for sustainable development, which is also very important and valuable. And then I also think that the SDGs, they can help when trying to look at global challenges and seeing how they are reflected on a local level. The Agenda 2030 resolution, it states that both local and also regional authorities, they have a lot of responsibility towards reaching the SDGs. And I think that the agenda and the sustainable development goals, they can give, like, for example, city leaders a lot of help when trying to see how their local initiatives are then linked to global challenges, but also how then global challenges are linked to the local level. So that's important. Yes, but that was very quickly about the Agenda 2030 and some of its core principles. And now I wanted to explain also what the Swedish environmental objectives system is. And this is a system that was implemented in Sweden already in 1999, so 16 years prior to Agenda 2030. And it was the Swedish Parliament that adopted this in 1999. And the overall aim of the system is then to hand over a society to the next generation in which all of the major environmental problems are solved without causing issues and harm to the environment in other countries, of course. And this sort of overarching aim, it's summed up by what's called a generational goal here in Sweden. And this generational goal, it describes what bigger sort of societal changes that need to happen for us to then be able to achieve a clean and healthy environment. And the generational goal, it's also accompanied by 16 environmental objectives. And these objectives, they exist to better sort of guide the environmental work here in Sweden, and to make this generational goal more tangible. And so these objectives, they describe the desired state of the environment that we want to have. For example, we want clean air, we want zero eutrophication, we want a varied agricultural landscape, and so forth. And just as the Agenda 2030 goals are also comprised of targets and indicators, so does these environmental objectives here in Sweden. There's targets and indicators which make sure and help us to follow up and evaluate how the work is going. And here in Sweden, we see these environmental objectives as our contribution to the environmental pillar of Agenda 2030. But just as I said before, we have to work with all of these three pillars together for it to be sustainable. And so at the end of this little speech here, I will tell you about this work group that I'm with at the county board that tries to work not only with the environmental parts of these objectives, but also to include the economic and the social pillar. But yes, I will talk more about that a little bit later. So now, since you'll be learning a lot about climate change adaptation measures this coming week, and also what sort of values they can bring to society, then I wanted to give you just two quick examples of how climate change adaptation can also help us in reaching the Sustainable Development Goals. And to start this off, I wanted to first show you this quote, which comes from the Paris Agreement. And yes, what I think that maybe a lot of people don't know is that the Paris Agreement, it doesn't only contain a temperature goal, but it also has a very straightforward goal for climate adaptation. And this is what it says in Article 7 of the agreement. It says that parties hereby established a global goal on adaptation of enhancing adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience, and reducing vulnerability to climate change, with a view to contributing to sustainable development and ensuring an adequate adaptation response in the context of the temperature goal. So yes, there is a very tangible goal here for climate change adaptation also within the Paris Agreement. And I think it's very important that we understand that even if we would succeed in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions very, very rapidly over the next decade, then the global temperature will still reach about plus 1.5 to 2 degrees. And we will definitely have to keep experiencing the consequences of climate change, no matter how well we do. So I think this ties into how important it is that we definitely start working a lot more with climate adaptation measures. And yes, of course, here I want you to note specifically that within this goal and in the Paris Agreement, it says that climate change adaptation measures should contribute to a sustainable development. Yes. And here is my first example then of a sustainable development goal and how that ties into climate adaptation. And the first one I chose here was goal number 6, which is called clean water and sanitation. And essentially, what climate change is essentially water change. And people around the globe, they will feel the changes and the climate, they'll feel the climate change largely through the changes to the hydrologic cycle. And just very briefly here, as the temperatures will rise, we'll also have a lot more evaporation from our oceans and lakes. And hot air can store a lot more water vapor than cold air. So there can be a much greater buildup of water in the atmosphere, with then the potential to cause a lot more these heavy rain bursts and rainfalls that we've heard both Dick and Lisa talk about here. And in an urban environment like the one here on the picture, where there's a lot of hard surfaces like roofs and pavement and parking lots and so forth, the water isn't able to infiltrate into the groundwater as easily, and hence then stays on the surface and causes flooding instead. And well, how is this related then to the sustainable development of clean water and sanitation? Well, say for example that there was a drinking water plant, or the city took its drinking water from the lake down here to the right. Then as stormwater flushes through the city, it has the potential to carry with it a lot of chemicals, which then would come with the stormwater and go straight into the river and into the lake. And well, this is not only then can of course cause harm to humans. It's a health threat if this gets into the drinking water, of course, but it also could cause wildlife and biodiversity to not do so great. And it also ties into the economic pillar, as it would cost a lot more to implement, for example, then more what would you say, like cleaning steps within the drinking water production. So it ties in both to the environmental side of sustainable development, but also to the social side with health effects for humans, and also to the economic pillar with it being more expensive to clean water with a lot of pollutants in it. And I also wanted to show you maybe a sort of an extreme example here from the US in Texas. So I'm going to try to show you another screen here. Here, can you see this news page here?
Yeah.
Yes. This is from the US in Texas in 2017. There was a big storm that came through and hit the coast of Texas. And it caused this chemical like plant to be completely flooded with water. And all the chemicals, they caught on fire and they leaked into the water, causing, well, as you can imagine, huge damages both to the environment and to the land here. So sort of the point I would like to make is, even though some adaptation strategies could be expensive to implement, then it's definitely worth it, because the cost of then trying to clean up after an event like this would be a lot higher. So it's worth it to use preventative measures for sure. Yes. And then I have one more little example here, which is related to goal number 11, which is about making cities and human settlements inclusive, resilient, and safe, and sustainable also. And well, as we have heard from the past two speakers, we definitely have to implement a lot of various adaptation strategies within cities to try to minimize the damages from, for example, flooding and rising sea levels. And you can see the consequences here. I mean, just imagine an ambulance trying to drive through these streets and picking up someone with a heart problem or whatever. There's a lot of connections, obviously, not to sustainable development and human health and economics here, as we've also heard our previous speakers talk about. And I also had the same example here actually as Dick had from Copenhagen, where they are building these sort of blue-green infrastructure solutions where it can store water in the case of a rainstorm, or it can be used as a recreational space when the weather is dry. And so, yes, leaving space, for example, for the ambulance to be able to go to the hospital here, even though there is even during a rainstorm, for example. Yes, and now finally, I just wanted to tell you about this group that I'm working with at the County Administrative Board. And the County Board, it has a very central role in the region's work with climate change and the environment and different strategies like that. And the government has assigned us to work with these different issues. So at the county board here in Gothenburg, we have this group, which is called the Environmental Objectives Group, that I'm very happy to be a part of. And we work a lot with trying to coordinate and support different regional actors when it comes to both the Agenda 2030 work, but also these environmental objectives that we have in Sweden. And we are a group with 15 different people. And we come from a huge variety of different backgrounds and from different units within the county board. We have people that are experts on circular economy, on culture, energy, human rights, agriculture, biodiversity, and so forth. And so, for example, then when we in this group develop regional action plans for the environment, or if we organize workshops and seminars, or write reports to the Swedish government, or whatever it is that we are doing, then we try to make sure that all of these three sort of dimensions of sustainable development, both the social, the economic, and the environmental dimension, that they are incorporated into all different decisions that we are making and all the processes that we are working with to make sure then that we utilize and highlight all of the synergy effects that exist between different goals. Yes, that was very briefly about our work. And at last now, I would like to wish you a very fun and inspiring week ahead. I'm definitely a big fan of this Climatecafé concept, and I think it ties in very nicely with the main goals of the Agenda 2030, and that we need to have this multidisciplinary approach to climate change adaptation measures in order for them to be both effective and for them to reach their full potential. And I'm thinking maybe as you go through this week of very interesting seminars and workshops and learn about climate change adaptation strategies and different communication tools and so forth, then maybe try sometimes and stop and think about how these different actions and measures, how they could contribute to sustainable development, and maybe how they could be implemented in a way so that we promote as many synergy effects between different sustainable development goals as possible. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat and I'll do my best to reply to them. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Emily. Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Well, I also wanted to actually give some time now. Now we do have some time while waiting for our next guest speaker. So we can have some time for questions. So I was wondering if there are any questions for Emily, Lisa, or Dick that you could ask them now, and we can have a small conversation.
And if they pop up later, that's fine too.
Yeah, I have a question. So what is the occurrence of the cloudbursts in Gothenburg, and when do they mainly occur? Is it in spring or in autumn?
Maybe I should answer that. Thanks for the question. We have chosen to use 100 years rain with the climate factor. So that means 100 years rain that are supposed to occur, or the year 2100 as a design rain. So when we build measures and build new part of the city, it should be able to handle a situation that happens once every 100 years. The year 2100, yes.
Thanks.
Is it understandable?
It is, yes.
Yeah. And according to the science, 100-year rain today is supposed to be a 50-year rain, the year 2100. So we use a factor to increase the rain today with a factor of 25% more to take the climate change into account. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And I now saw the chat question from Floris. I have sent some BMPs to Björn actually, so hopefully he can use that information. Is it okay for you, Björn?
Yeah, sure. I'll make sure to post it forward to Floris. So thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Great, thanks, Dick. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I see that we have another question from you, Jintare.
Yeah, I have a question about division of responsibilities. Do I understand correctly that mainly municipality and city takes up the responsibility to come up with measures to deal with climate, to adapt to climate changes? Or do people personally have to apply measures in their house? What is the, how to say, do they have that personal responsibility as well, or it is taken by municipalities?
Maybe I should try to answer that too. If you are a private property owner, you have the responsibility to protect your building yourself. But the municipality has a responsibility to see to that new developments can handle extreme weather as well. So when we build new things and new parts of the city, we have to show that this part of the city can handle, for instance, cloudbursts with according to design criteria told about earlier 100 years event, without having effects on new buildings and the new roads. And also the municipality have other responsibilities connected to climate adaptation. And one of the things is accessibility. You should be able to use some roads even at these extreme weather conditions to be able to protect the city. So the police and ambulance and fire department should be able to do their job even though it's raining very much, or even though the elevation in the sea is very high. And we should also see to we have a responsibility in the municipality to see to that critical infrastructure works in those cases as well. That includes hospitals and electrification and all other stuff. So the city shouldn't just stop working at those occasions. Was it good answer? Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the questions. I don't know if there are any more questions or if you would all like to take a break. In that case, we can take a break of 15 minutes and then meet again here. Well, I would like to offer the space for anyone who likes to stay and talk to our Professor Floris Bohart or any of the speakers like Emily and Lisa and Dick. You can stay, and if you like, please well, make use of the break, and we will see you here in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Good start. So we can have a break as well, right?
But I was just about to ask as well. It seems everyone left. Gabriela, I will not be joining anymore for this morning. And now I had to try to make a COVID test on my son. He's only 3.5 years old, so wish me luck.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Hopefully it's not.
Yeah. Dick, so interesting to hear from you. As you can tell, I'm not at all a professional in this, but I will have a colleague soon who will be, and she will probably get in touch with you and other close by municipalities.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Yeah, it's interesting to learn from each other. Yeah.
So thank you all, and I will see some of you on Wednesday.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks again, Lisa.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
And actually, I have to go to take a vaccination for COVID.
Good.
So I'm leaving you for now and talk to you maybe on Wednesday.
Yes.
I haven't had any meeting invitation for that occasion yet. Do you know anything about that?
If you say so, yes.
I
will send it. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Talk to you later then, and good luck for now.
Just so you know, the link, we have this link. It's the same link for the whole week. So in case you cannot find us, we're always on this link.
Great.
Yes,
great.
So that makes things easier.
Thank you. Then I know.
Okay, thank you a lot, and
Good luck.
see you soon.
Bye for now.
Good luck. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Are you there, Gabriela?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. All right. I'm gonna get headed to another meeting as well. But I wanted to say thank you before I leave. And yeah, wish you good luck with the week.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to say thank you in return. A very interesting presentation, and it was really lovely to have you as well. Like, it was a nice build up on the local challenges and the overall global goals as well, and what we do all aim for. So thank you so much, and we'll be in contact. So
Yes,
I really hope to see you sometime soon. Yeah, thank you a lot.
And I might join for a while on Friday.
Perfect.
Also at the a new seminar. So.
Yeah, that will be great. I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I look forward to listening in for sure.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, well, I'll see you.
Good luck. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Tell me what's
Perfect.
going on.
Okay, perfect. Well, we have let everyone to have a small break, and they will all be back in 5 minutes or so, and then we can give you the floor for the talk.
I'm so sorry, but the paper I got said 10:40 till 11 sharp.
Oh, okay. That's very strange. Maybe
Am I
my apologies.
spoiling the entire structure now?
No, that's no problem. We improvised, and it's all good. But then I guess it's my mistake. In all of my files it said 10:20 to 10:40, and that's why I was already emailing you. But no problem. It's probably also my fault. Maybe I sent you an old file or was a misunderstanding. So I'm very happy that you're here.
All right.
And some of the people, we had more people in the call, and some just quit the call to go and have a coffee and take a water. So, well, we will see them all back in a few minutes.
Yes. Do I still have 20 minutes?
Yes. Yes, you do. We can. We have time until 11. So, and even if it takes a little bit longer, that's no problem. The next part will focus mainly on students. So we will have a session with them getting to know each other and well, forming groups for the whole week. So and you are our last guest talk. So there will be no problem. You can also take some minutes extra. Yes.
Excited to hear you talk. So
yeah.
So yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming. And if you like to grab a glass of water, that's also possible. I think everyone will be back in just a few minutes.
Just update me, how many participants? Most of them are students, or they are scientists and students equal, or what does it look like?
Yeah, so we had 18 students who signed up, but we had 6 currently in this call. And we are with our team, and yeah, the students are from Sweden. They're also from Hanze University, so both from Sweden and the Netherlands. And we have different departments like Sea and Society Study, Psychology, Archaeology, Art and Design students, and students from Hanze from Civil Engineering. So very different backgrounds, but this is also what we do in ClimateCafe. We really like to form multidisciplinary groups of students from different, from different angles of studies.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a little bit the update. And well, so far we had a guest talk by the governor, Anders Danielsson. We had an introduction in the ClimateCafe, introduction of the local challenge of Gothenburg City by Dick Carlson, and of Mölndal City by Lisa Jarner, and a small talk also by Emily Mollersten on the Agenda 2030. She's from the County Administrative Board. And we have you as well. So that's very exciting.
Yeah. Okay, I guess I'm ready.
Okay. Well, what do you think, Floris? Should we wait a few more minutes, or should we start?
Most of them are coming in now.
Yeah.
So if you really want to start, we can wait maybe 2 more minutes and everybody's here. But if you're excited to start, we can maybe start with an introduction of you very slowly, and everybody can catch your talk. But I think most of them are already coming in. So
yeah, true. And very nice that you guys have your cameras on. Thank you a lot. That also gives a nice feeling to the speakers, I think, to see some faces. Yeah. Okay, well, you can start and then people will join in. And we are recording the session. I hope that's okay with you. The purpose of that is that we can share later the recording with the students who couldn't be here or who missed it, or people who like to rewatch it. So hope that is all right. Okay, well, the floor is yours, or the screen is yours. I will make you a co-host as well, so you can share screen. Yes. Okay.
You tell me when I start talking, so I know.
Yes, you can start talking now. Yes, thank you.
Oh, everyone's listening.
Yes.
We're ready.
Okay, ready, ready. Okay, everybody invincible out there in cyberspace. My name is Håkan Strömberg and I work with the City Museum of Gothenburg, and I've been given a few minutes to tell you a love story. And that is a story of the city of Gothenburg and of water. Water is of course necessary for every city, and Gothenburg is located where it is due to water. That's pretty normal. And water has been around it all the time. It's water under, above, in the neighborhood, of course. And the lack of water has also been a problem for Gothenburg. I mean, imagine to put a city where you can't drill a proper well. I mean, they've been trying, of course, they've been drilling and they found water, but then they taste it and say, this tastes a bit healthy. You know, according to the principle that medicine can't be trusted if it is tasty. So we've had several mineral springs in Gothenburg. I mean, the main square in the middle, the main park in the middle of Gothenburg is called Brunnsparken, simply Wells Park. That was a mineral spring for a few decades. We have more of those. They often lasted for a few decades, and it could be a discussion whether they were healthy or not. Ordinary people, they got their everyday water from the canals instead, the very same canals where they were pouring out the wastewater. So diseases have been a part of the history as well. Well, that was a bit of a deviation. Let's go to the start. Through Western Sweden, you find the largest river of Sweden, that is Göta älv. It comes from the largest river in Sweden, Lake Vänern, the third largest lake in Europe. And it has been a communication route, of course, between the sea and the inland and the sea. And also from time to time, the border between the Kingdom of Sweden and the Kingdom of Norway. And on the south side, the Swedish side, it has always been a town since early Middle Ages. And that town has been, you know, it's the king's way to try to control the trade in between Sweden and the world, because in those days, a city was mainly made to bring in taxes. You know, the law said you mustn't do any trading outside the city, you must come in there, and there the officials are waiting to take the toll of it. Yes, smuggling has always been a major problem, or a benefit way of making money, of course, depending on your perspective. This town, this city was originally located far inland, but has step by step been moved further down to the sea. And 400 years ago, this very year, happy birthday to you, Gothenburg was finally founded where it is today. And that is on some meadows by the river inside the last bend the river makes before it reaches the sea, so the city is a bit protected from the rage of the sea. Here comes the problem, of course, with water, because building a city here wasn't easy. It is old riverbed from a time when the ocean was higher, or rather the land was lower, pressed down by the inland ice. And that means that Gothenburg is on top of meter after meter of blue clay. And also, it's a strange location, because normally you build a city where two communications routes are meeting or crossing. I mean, minor river entering a larger one, or a road crossing a river. It was just a river. So if you wanted some kind of harbor where a ship could go straight into the city, you needed to make a minor river, you needed a canal. So the first thing that happened was that a number of soldiers were showing up with shovels. And the engineer said, dig. Okay, how much did the soldiers say? And he said, just enough for a seagoing ship. Okay, a few meters deep, 10 meters wide, a couple of 100 meters, go ahead. So they started digging in the blue mud. And after 100 meters, it said, clonk, because they hit the rock. So they had to move the canal a bit. The old canal was left for a few decades, known as the pit. So they relocated the canal and dig it all the way in. And it must have been horrible. I mean, blue clay, water-filled blue clay with hand shovels like that. And the water was coming in all the time, so they needed a pump. Yes, and this was the time before engines, so how did you make the pump work? Well, with muscle powers. So a number of horses were tied to this, walking round and round and round all day long, and that was a problem as well, because the first horses died from some disease. It was those little creeps inside your skin working and eating them up alive. And another problem was, of course, that the Swedes were not very good at building canals. It was a new way in the early 1600s to found a city. Are there any from the Netherlands here now? It's your fault. The dead horses, actually. Yes. Fashion rules, and that includes when you are building a city. And in Europe, there was a fashion that started in Italy in the 1500s. We call it today the ideal city. It was the idea of a city being a geometric piece of art, looking like a star with walls around, and inside you got the streets and the plots and everything in perfect geometric order. And that spread and reached the Netherlands, where there were a little less stones and a little bit more mud. So they changed it into earthworks around, and instead of streets in, they had canals entering. And well, the King of Sweden, he wanted a modern city. He looked at the cities of the Netherlands and said, I want one of these. So they started digging canals, making earthworks of the clay they get out of the canals. There were even a system of a moat around, of course, for Danes to drown in, and a system of ditches for flooding the entire area in case of enemies approaching. So the first walls of Gothenburg were heaps of blue clay around what would be the city itself. Yes, and that clay was used for more because it was low meadows. So in order not to get wet feet indoors, the inhabitants, they filled up their plots with blue clay, and on top of that, wooden shavings or something, and then they built houses. And the priest in this new city, he complained that he could bury people in the cemetery because before you reach 6 foot under, the water was coming up. Am I the only one who get the feeling that this city is having the smell of wet rag socks in a way? Yes. This blue clay was showing its power all the time, of course. I mean, for example, when the canal was ready and they were ready to pour water into it, they used huge logs that they dumped into the mud to keep the canal fixed. And then the water came in, and the blue clay did what blue clay does. Here came the logs floating on the canal instead of stabilizing it. And this blue clay, it hasn't calmed down at all. I mean, Gothenburg is still sitting on it. So every year there's new building that has to be stabilized because it's sinking. Or more often, half of it is sinking. So the building is torn apart, so they stabilize it. And we, of course, have the line sleds or mud sleds or whatever. They've been going on for as long as we know. In the early Middle Ages, an enormous mudslide went out into the southern branch of Göta älv, where Gothenburg is located and changed the way of the water. So most of the water is still going in the northern branch instead. From time to time, there have been shorelines floating away with factories and houses on top of it. And the most deadly one was in 1977. We call it Tuveraset, when a huge area where a newly built area of houses, or private houses, were located. And suddenly the mud started to move and 70 buildings were just floating away and were crushed. 9 people died, about 60 were injured. And it still was a lucky thing that happened in daytime. People were away at work or in school. If it had happened a few hours later in the middle of the night when everybody was there sleeping, the death tolls could have been horrible. Horror pass. To continue with the canals, Gothenburg didn't only have the harbor canal that still remains, we also have minor canals, the canal system. Most of them are gone, but there's still one canal that is connecting Gothenburg to Mölndal River. It's a minor river. Western Sweden is pretty flat. It is a bit hard to believe if you're riding a bike in central Gothenburg, but still it's rather flat. That means hydropower is rare. But there are exceptions. In the Mölndal River, a couple of kilometers south of Gothenburg, the river is forming real rapids. And man has been trying to use the power for as long as we know. In the early 1600s, there were mills in a row along the rapids. And Mölndal actually means mill river. And they were supporting the surroundings with, well, flour, of course, and bone meal and early pre-industrial products, but also with a lot of taxes to the crown. And now that they built a new city, it was important for the king to make sure that the city had incomes enough to survive. And since the kings in those days had never had any money, they did what they did. He just told the people of Mölndal that all your taxes would now go directly to this new town that I erected over there. So in the beginning, all the people working for Gothenburg, from the mayor to the executioner, they were paid mainly with tax from Mölndal. But the canal was not made mainly for bringing in tax. It was more for, well, for the products of Mölndal to come on boat straight way into the center of Gothenburg. But river in all its glory, the main reason for Gothenburg to be here is, of course, a connection of river and the sea. And the sea has been a matter of communication as well as a question of a resource itself. I mean, from the start, the merchants of Gothenburg, they have been, they were sending ships away from Gothenburg with trees for masts and butter and agricultural products, and they sail off for North European cities like Hamburg or Amsterdam or London, selling it off and then buying stuff there. Sometimes it seemed like whatever they could get, 200 hats, great. And then bring them back to Gothenburg and sell them here and then start counting the money. And when it comes to resources, well, we must talk about the herring, that little fish. From time to time, there's been an invasion of herrings along the coast. There are tales that you could go out in the fjord and then take an oar and put it straight out into the water, and it was standing there due to all the fish. We had one large herring period between the mid-1700s and the early 1800s, when about 150,000 tons of herring were caught every year. And that changed the entire region. The merchants of Gothenburg threw everything away to get into the herring industry. And on every island in the archipelago, you could find small industries who were salting herring or boiling herring into lamp oil. That also gave Sweden the first environmental debate, actually. If you want to boil oil out of herrings, you put 1 part herring and 3 parts water in a pot and boil it for about 8 hours. Then all that is fat is floating on top, and you collect that, and what you do with the rest? You pour it out into the sea. And that was, of course, killing the seabed for 100 meters out from every island. And that's exactly where the other fish are having their babies. So it was killing the wildlife in the water. And that was a long debate where the industry, of course, defended themselves, saying, no, we are causing no damage at all. But finally, there was a decision that these industries, they should have pools where they pour the water and the water could dissipate into thin air and they could take care of the rest. And by the way, this lamp oil was, of course, exported. So streets of Paris were lit with fish oil from Sweden. But the ocean is a moody lady. So it was a bit dangerous for making a living out of it. A storm in the North Sea, a ship is lost and you are ruined. And one year, suddenly the herring doesn't show up. And you know, you can't, it doesn't help to stare at the clock, it won't move faster. It doesn't help staring out at the sea and demanding the herring to come, it doesn't. So in the early 1800s, they say the archipelago outside Gothenburg was like a ruined city. On every island there were left buildings who had been part of the herring industry, you know, just standing there. And another thing, of course, that changed in the archipelago in those days was that if you go trip in Gothenburg archipelago, you'll notice that it's not much trees on the cliffs. They are quite naked. They didn't used to be that way. There were trees and forests out there as well. But then during the herring industry, they cut down anything that could burn for putting it under the pots. So we got these naked rocks. Well, that was water under, along, beneath, behind. Let's talk about the water above. Welcome to West Sweden, the part of the world where it always rains. Gothenburg has even decided, well, now when it's turning 400 years, they have adapted a plan to become the best city in the world where it's raining, including special rain playgrounds. But it could be too much even of that good. For example, I mean, as late as 2006, it was raining all the autumn, and a week before Christmas, the river started flooding and streets were closed, and finally 500-meter European highway was washed away with cars and everything. Yes, and that of course has happened before. But here's a main difference. If there was a huge flood caused by rain in the 1800s, well, that was a trouble, of course, but the road could be easily put back. But today our infrastructure is extremely expensive. So if a railroad is washed away or a European highway is washed away, it's costly. And if it happens all over a region, it costs enormous amount of money. Yes. We also have other kinds of floods, of course. This is about water as an enemy, I feel. And that is from the ocean itself, of course. When it's a storm coming up from the west, enormous amounts of water could be pushed out in the river and into the canals. And that happens from time to time. As early as in 1622, when they were building the city, they had a storm that made the building a bit more complicated. But the most notorious one is in, I believe, 1713, when, according to the chronicles, the water was coming in, the canal was flooded, the streets were covered, the squares were covered, the water were coming into the cellars and the basements, destroying the goods of the merchants. So as you can see, the story of Gothenburg is a story of water. It's located due to water, it's threatened by water, they have to fight the water in every single moment. It's a lack of water. It's a benefit of water along the mills and for trading. It's water all around. And that benefit of the water and that struggle against the water, well, I suppose that will continue. It will continue as long as Gothenburg exists. All water exists, but I guess the water will survive Gothenburg. I hope. And that's what I plan to tell you about the water in Gothenburg. So I simply stop now and hope you have a great conference meeting continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the story, and yes, very exciting way also in which you told us all about the recent history and not so recent history, and well, the influence of water all around, even from above. I wanted to say and invite all the people who are in this meeting now, if you have questions for Hakan, I hope I pronounced your name right. How do I pronounce it?
Håkan.
Håkan. Okay. A bit, I guess I can try. But well, if you guys have any questions or are interested to ask something more, please go ahead. I don't know if any of you have questions.
If not, maybe I can ask a question or kickstart. You're a great storyteller, and yeah, I don't think there are a lot of people that know the real history of the area than you. What with your knowledge of all that history, what do you think we should keep? What is the lessons learned from history, and maybe elaborate a bit on because most of the cities, when we talk about cloudbursts, we're going to infiltrate water. That could be a risk as well, inducing maybe quickly or subsidence or anything. Is there anything from the history that you would know of that might be really benefiting the city, or lessons learned?
Don't build heavy things on solid ground. If you build huge buildings on top of clay, there may be consequences.
Yeah.
And you must always know that even if it takes 50 years in between, the flood will come.
Yeah.
I mean, storms will come. It's not wise to think, well, it hasn't happened in 1899, so what's the risk, what's the chance? It will come.
Yeah.
Because the ocean is there, the wind is there, it will come.
We have a short memory as people, right? Yeah.
Yes, someone has told us that we don't know anything about the future. The only thing we know that is that within 30 years from now, whenever you are asking, something radically will happen that will radically change the way we are living.
Yeah.
On short or long term. We don't know what, simply, but within 30 years, something will happen. A pandemic, technical change, a world war, whatever, something will happen within 30 years. So be prepared. Don't pretend that nothing is going to happen, because it will.
That's a good lesson. Yeah. Friedrich Hegel, a philosopher, said, there's one thing we learn from history that we don't learn from history. Yeah. So it's really good. Yeah. Good to know, to go back. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question. You said like there are some buildings which are unstable because of the clay. Like, is there any example that I visit and see here in Göteborg?
Yeah, the city hall was stabilized just
really?
last summer or something like that.
And how do they stabilize?
Well, that's a tricky thing. They simply have to open the floor and then put down enormous tall iron poles down to the solid ground, and then build back the floor on top of it. So it's tricky.
Yeah, sounds tricky.
And expensive.
Very interesting. Yeah. I'm also thinking that in relation to what you just said, that a part of what we would need as a skill in the future is indeed being resilient and how to be ready to deal with uncertainty. because indeed we don't know what is going to happen. We can only prepare and be honest with each other and collaborate like we do here. And for that, I'm also very excited to announce like the next part of the Climate Cafe for today. We had planned to get to know you guys, the students, participants, and to spend some time together that you can get to know each other as well. And we've prepared some assignments for you and want to introduce the Miro board. Miro is an app which allows us to work together in the online environment. So I will be introducing that in a bit. But first, I wanted to also say thank you to Håkan for your talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really lovely to have you. And I want to invite you as well to our final seminar on Friday. We're going to have an online event where the students will present, and I can send you an email about it. But we'll present the outcomes of the Climate Cafe, or what had happened here, what kind of stories did we collect, what kind of designs or solutions or ideas we had come up with. So if you're interested, you're more than welcome to join us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And bye.
Yes. Talk to you soon. Bye. All right. Well, Peter, Björn, and Hanne-Marie, thank you as well for being part of today, the whole day, and the whole morning, I want to say, with all the introductions. I don't know if you'd like to add a word, maybe introduce yourselves to the students. I thought that might be nice, as you will be also facilitating some of the elements throughout the week. But I thought maybe you can introduce yourself shortly, and then we will take over with the students.
Yeah, sure. It's Björn here. Björn Lagerdal is my name. I work as a project manager for the county administrative board. So Anders, the governor that you heard in the beginning of today's session, he's my top boss. I'm really excited that all of you could show up here and that we could make this Climate Cafe happen. I think it's brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to all the work and the workshops, and to see what the outcomes are, and how you all feel about it. What kind of thoughts and impressions you get. So I'm very much looking forward to Friday's session, because that's where sort of everything's going to cook down to. But before that, you will see me again, hopefully tomorrow, because I work also in the workshop for the river walk. So very good to see you all, and well, I'll say welcome as well, and I'll leave the floor to Hanne-Marie or Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Björn and Gabrielle. I'm sorry my video is not working today, but I'm really glad to be here also today. And thank you for all the nice presentation and introduction, Gabriella and Floris. And also a big welcome to all your students. My name is Hanne-Marie, and I'm a colleague of Björn at the County Administrative Board. And I will be the one who will be holding together the Fridays program for the final seminar. So you will get an email, hopefully from me tomorrow, with all the details for that one. So, and if you have any questions about Friday, you can contact me or Björn. But I wish you all the best in this week, and maybe I will pop in and listen to some of the workshops that you will attend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hanne-Marie.
Yeah, my name is Peter Nordbrandt, and I'm working together with Hanne-Marie and Björn, and I'm a biologist working with water and biodiversity. And yeah, I see you tomorrow on the workshop with river walk and ecosystem services. So that will be exciting. Yeah, nice to see you.
Thank you for, well, lovely that you introduced yourselves as well. I can imagine that you all also have quite a busy day, so we will continue the session further with the students, with Miro board and getting to know each other. But if one of you likes to stay, you're of course more than welcome. And yes, thank you again for all the introductions up until so far.
Perfect. And I will check out. You met me already, and see you tomorrow with climate mapping. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Have fun.
Thank you, Floris.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.